Hi. But I just think like how does a person know whether they like or enjoy a musical instrument? Nice shoes. Uh how do they know whether they like an instrument or not if they're never able to touch it? You know? I know we have this nice piano up here. Yeah. They will go out of tune. Yep. So yeah, that's how Nicholas learned how to play. He just played. Hey, great to see you. You're pretty. It's been a couple weeks. We should review. How do you feel about a review? I I will. I will ask you questions because you asked me to. All right. I don't know. Would you like a drink?
No, thank you. I don't want your Dr. Pepper.
It's cherry Coke.
I don't want that.
They're
either.
out of Dr. Pepper.
Oh.
A couple things about living in a small town. Our local gas station is very convenient. It's very often out of Dr. Pepper in their fountain. So I
They're
do
out
not
of a lot of
frequent them
stuff
very
in
often.
their fountain.
If you didn't know this about me, I do not drink coffee. I drink Dr. Pepper. So they don't have it in town. That's right. Caffeine-free Diet Coke, not in town.
Not a thing.
So I go to Casey's fairly regularly. Walk inside. Chelsea would be like, "You should grab a drink." Like while we're getting gas or something, you should run inside and grab a drink. And I walk inside. I don't run. I walk. So I guess I'm not following instructions. Maybe if I ran, they would have it. So I walk inside, go around the corner, look at the fountain, and weigh my options of, do I get something other than Dr. Pepper?
Diet Mountain Dew or...
Do I get something other than
tea.
Dr. Pepper? Or just suck on my spit? Just
Okay,
kidding.
that's
Anyway.
disgusting. What in the world?
All right.
Let's
What a good time.
review and move on from that.
That's not part of the review. Part of the review, we've been walking through the Bible. Don't be looking over
You
here.
ate 3 of 4 of those?
No, I've only eaten one. I gave one away. Wow. Made friends.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Let's review. For real. Let's review.
We talked about, I'll make a short review of Torah. What was the main theme? The one word.
You would ask me.
It was a
that.
ship. What kind of ship?
A partnership.
There we go, partnership. See, you are on it.
I did remember.
I would give you an A in my class.
Thank
All right.
you.
She's in college. She stresses about those things.
Hey.
So the main conversation about Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, can you name them?
Are you serious? Yes.
I am.
Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy.
There we go.
I could keep going even. But I won't.
No, I didn't say extra credit.
Okay, fine.
And the main theme is partnership because God is looking for
A relationship?
someone to partner with.
Oh, well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah. A bride. And we're going to hear that echoed later on in the prophets. And he finds this partner, and when you partner with someone and your call to them is that they're going to be a blessing, that all the people are going to be blessed. Just like God did with the tabernacle. Where did God put the tabernacle?
In the center.
In the center. God put his people
In the center.
in the center. The turnstiles of the ancient world, as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And he placed them there. That's the book of Joshua, yes? Conquest. And they get established there, and we get this cycle that begins to happen.
In Judges.
In Judges. What did we call it?
Redemption?
The redemption cycle. Because we want to focus on what God is doing. Because if we're pursuing after who God is there any limit to his mercy?
No.
None. If you look it up online, if you do a quick Google search, Judges cycle of,
Automatically says sin.
it's going to say sin. But in the midst of all of that sin coming out of our ears, like all we could do is sin. There were some people doing it right. There were some people who were pursuing after God and taking notice of the oppressed and not cutting the corners of their fields. And where did we read the story about that?
In Ruth.
In Ruth. This scandalous love story that overlaps with the Judges. And this week, we're going to kind of pick up the story right there. And I've titled this one, The Last of the Judges.
I like him.
How
I think.
did...
Unless you change my
mind. Ooh, here we go. When we talked through the book of Judges, what was the last judge that was mentioned in the book of Judges? Samson. Shimshon. Anyway, is he the last of the judges?
I wouldn't think so.
So after the story of Samson, what do we get? There's another story. It takes about the last 2 or 3 chapters of the book of Judges.
I don't remember.
We see this Levite who is pursuing after his bride. It's referenced as a concubine or bride. Huh? Nope, not Gideon. We're way past Gideon.
We talked about it, but I don't remember.
And he has found his bride, and his servant who is with him says, hey, there's a Gentile city over here. Let's go rest there. And the Levite says, there is no way I am going to that Gentile city to rest. I'm going to rest right here in this city and amongst my people, the people of Benjamin. He finds his way into the middle of the city, and he's going to sleep and rest in the city square.
Oh, and they tell him not to
and
go.
His servant
Yeah.
and his bride. And there's a man who stops him and says, nope, don't stay out here. Come and stay at my house.
And it was just like Sodom, the story, right? What was that guy's name? Is that even important?
15, 16, 17 in Judges, I believe, is the space we're in. They just call him a Levite, but there's you talk about the house of the man that he stays in? Micah.
So that's where he stayed?
That's where he stays.
Oh.
And then the people of the city show up and say...
At Micah's house?
At Micah's house and say, hey, there's a guy who showed up here. Send him out here and let us have our way with him.
So that guy wanted to stay in that town because it was his people?
Because he's a Levite.
Yes. And those were Levites that knocked on the door?
No, they were Israelites.
I'm confused. I thought you said they were his people.
Tribe of Levi doesn't have a place. Why? Because they have a job.
Oh, yeah.
They take care of the temple.
So I don't understand why those people did that.
Because now sin has become so rampant. Instead of the people of God pursuing after God and trying to fulfill his mission of being a blessing to everybody, it has completely flipped, and they're the anti-story. And if their mission, if their calling was to set people free, introduce them to a God, and be a blessing and bless all people, they'd become oppressors.
Well, for sure.
So much so that they're not just oppressing the foreigner, they're oppressing their own people.
Right, yeah.
And they try to talk them off the ledge, No, you don't want to do this. No, you don't want to do this. Exactly like Lot did. And they say, okay, fine. have this woman. And they did take her, and they had their way with her and left her for dead on the doorstep the next day.
That's in the Levite story?
That's in the Levite story. And that's how the book of Judges ends. And the same thing is happening when we find our way into the book of 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel is still in the time of the judges. And Samson's no longer judging Israel, but there is a man who is. And who is it? As the book of 1 Samuel opens, who's judging Israel?
I don't know.
A priest. Samuel is being born, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Hannah, and the Song of Hannah is all at the beginning of 1 Samuel. Who's judging Israel at the beginning of Samuel? Because they don't have a king. They have to have a judge. Come on, we know this. We, you, somebody, for sure. What house is Samuel raised up in?
I don't. Eli?
Eli.
Sorry.
Why is Samuel being raised in Eli's house?
Because Eli's sons were corrupt.
Eli's sons were corrupt. Here's how bad they were. The people who are supposed to be administering justice, the people who are supposed to be defenders of the law of God and the way of God.
I almost said atrocity,
No.
But then I said it anyway.
Great job.
Go ahead.
They are defenders. They're supposed to. What are they doing? What's happening? They're taking the fat portion, which is they're taking the fat portion of the offerings of sacrifices, and who is that supposed to be for? That's God's. The fat portion is God's. It says specifically in the law, and these men should know because they're priests in line to be the chief priests and judges over Israel.
Which would be terrible because they're doing it wrong.
On top of that, they're taking bribes. On top of that, they are sleeping with women at the gate. You remember another story that we've talked about where it was a woman at a gate? There was a woman, and she showed up where these people were shearing sheep, and she dressed up at the gate as people passed by, looking like a
prostitute. Oh, that was
a shrine prostitute.
Judah? No, Judah.
It was Judah.
Oh, okay. Whew.
And
Tamar. Oh man.
So
I'm really good at this.
When we read in 1 Samuel, it's going to be what, chapters 1 and 2 and 3. It's Hophni and Phinehas, yes? When we read about Hophni and Phinehas and their exploits, and they talk about sleeping with the women at the gate of the temple, the image we should see is shrine prostitutes.
And why are they called that?
Because they are giving themselves as an act of worship to a god.
Oh my goodness.
But not this God.
Well, yeah, no, clearly.
So clearly, these men are not only stealing from God, they're also participating in intermingling other religions with this one.
Yeah,
so
that's not good.
This corruption and this rebellion against an oppression of the people of God isn't just happening amongst random everyday citizens. Like, this is
in the priestly homes.
It's a bad deal.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
So God, with his own voice, calls a new guy to supplant those two people. Who is it? Samuel.
Doesn't he whisper?
Yeah. And he runs to Eli's door.
Called me?
You called me? I didn't call you. Second time, you called me? I didn't call you. But if it happens again, say, here I am, Lord, I'm listening.
Yeah.
He's like, so Samuel gets taught from Eli, who can't raise his own sons right. He gets taught from Eli at least how to hear God and respond to him. And then Eli dies, and somebody else has to lead the people of Israel and judge them. And who's that? Who is it?
I don't know.
Well, Hophni and Phinehas are dead.
Why?
The name of the book is 1 Samuel.
Oh.
Take a stab in the dark at why we get the backstory of Samuel.
Well, okay, I would guess Samuel.
Samuel, yes.
I thought it was a trick question. I didn't think it was that obvious.
Not a trick question. And Samuel does such a good job at following the way of Eli that the people of Israel want a king.
Oh, Israel.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with them wanting a king?
I just know who they pick.
Well, we're going to get there. So we're going to pick up the story in 1 Samuel chapter 8. Are we good with the backstory so far? Are we tracking with that?
Yes, Matt, we are.
Yeah. Probably shouldn't say that. He might show up. I'm just kidding. I think he's on sabbatical. That's why I said that. All right. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 1. When Samuel became old, he made his sons judges over Israel. So who's the last judge of Israel?
I'm assuming Samuel's sons.
All right. Let's see what happens here. The name of his firstborn son was Joel. Name of his second, Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. Yet his sons did not walk in his ways, but turned aside after gain. They took bribes and perverted justice.
So he really did walk in Eli's footsteps.
That's what I'm saying. He was trained up in his ways. So he knew how to talk to God. He knew how to interact with God. And I think if we read this story, we should understand this is a warning. We can know all the way to interact with God, but if we don't hand it off to the next generation, we just get a bunch of people who are playing the part and not actually doing the work.
Oh, that's good.
We've got to get out of the way and push them into the presence and show them the consequences of perverting the way of God. Anyway, then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, this is a great way to open a conversation. Behold, you are old.
That's what you say to me.
What a great conversation. Hey, we wanted to have a quick chat with you, okay?
You're old.
A group of older people. If they're elders,
yeah,
in this time, it's not a bunch of 30-somethings coming to a retiree going, hey, you're pretty old. This is a group of older people showing up to a retiree's home and saying, hey, you're old. Thanks for the news update.
Yeah.
So something tells me this is not a great conversation we're about to have. Anybody else? Like, hey, you're pretty old. Okay, is something good coming from this conversation? Because it doesn't feel like it. Yeah. Is this conversation? Yeah. Anyway, if you're starting a conversation with, hey, you're old.
Mine says, look, you are old.
You are old.
Look.
Yeah. Hey. Let's be honest about what's going on here. You're old.
Yeah.
And your sons don't act like you. Well,
yeah.
That's because they're not me. So now, appoint us a king. Uh-oh. Oh, man. My pages are sticking together. This is a pause for dramatic effect. It was planned. Appoint for us a king to judge us like all the nations. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. What's wrong here? Is it wrong? Is it wrong for the people of Israel to ask for a king?
Well, I feel like it is because they say, give us a king to judge us when the Lord has appointed judges that are supposed to listen to him. So isn't God supposed to be the king?
Will you hold this spot in your Bible and turn to a different spot?
Uh-huh.
Will you turn to Deuteronomy 17? So the question is it wrong, verse 14, is it wrong for the people of God to ask for a king? This is the question. Do you have Deuteronomy 17, verse 14? Go ahead, tell us.
When you come to the land which the Lord your God is giving you, and possess it, and dwell in it, and say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me.
Is that verse 15?
Did you want me to keep going? You said 14.
14 and 15.
Oh, okay. You shall surely set a king over you, whom the Lord your God chooses. One from among your brethren you shall set as king over you. You may not set a foreigner over you who is not your brother.
All right. I'm good with that.
So I guess it's not wrong. It just feels wrong because
So,
it's not what they've done.
So it's not wrong for them to ask for a king. We okay with that?
I mean, I guess so.
Now, what is happening here, though? Why would this be something that would upset Samuel? Because he's not getting displaced. So we're going to ask God to give us a king, but they're not asking God to give us a king. They're asking Samuel, appoint a king over us because you speak for God, because your sons are not going to cut the mustard. And you're old. You can't do this forever. Probably should stop doing that. A wise man once said, hey, old people shouldn't be riding scooters. Just saying. It wasn't me. I didn't say it, but I've heard it said once before. Somebody else said it. On his way to the emergency room to have somebody else get surgery.
For riding
said scooter.
It's funny now, but it was awful.
While we were in the middle of a moving process.
Oh, it was
It's good. Come move with us. Break your wrist. Spend an extra day not in Oklahoma. Okay.
Anyway.
So, why was Samuel upset then? What's wrong with this request for a king?
I'm not really sure. Does he feel like he's being rejected?
No.
Well, that's what it says.
He's retired.
Say what?
Yeah, Deuteronomy, and here's what ends up happening. Here's what's going on here. The people of Israel don't just ask for a king. They ask for not just for a king to judge them, because that's what God said he was going to give them if they asked for it when they got here.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking for a king so they can be just like everybody else. And they go on to say that they want a king so they can be just like everybody else, and that king can go out and fight their battles for them. At what point in our call, what point in the Bible are the people of God called to be just like everybody else?
Never.
Not one time.
No.
We're supposed to be different. We're supposed to be in this world, but not of this world. Even right now today. We're supposed to be different. There's supposed to be something different about us. And these people have gone from possessing this land to be a blessing to oppressing their own people to asking God for them to be just like everybody else, and they got just like everybody else. Let us have a king who's going to fight for us, and we will oppress the foreigner and be just like everybody else. And they've already started mixing all the religions just like everybody else, creating space for all these other things just like everybody else. And Samuel is upset and prays. Even though their request is ridiculous, and he's upset, and he's like, this is going to be a problem. I'm telling you it's going to be a problem. He prays and asks God anyway. Mm-hmm. What does God say?
He says, heed the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. According to all the works which they have done since the day I brought them up out of Egypt, even to this day, with which they have forsaken me and served other gods, so they are doing to you also. Now therefore heed their voice, however you shall solemnly forewarn them, and show them the behavior of the king who will reign over them.
So, let me ask you. Personally, it almost makes me disappointed in this process that God lets his people rebel.
Yeah.
He says, okay.
He could have just said no.
He could have said no. But he didn't. He said, okay, I'll give you a king. And he said, I will appoint a king over you. So we get the guy that everybody would have chose.
Yeah.
We get that guy.
Tall, dark,
we
and
get
handsome.
The tall, handsome, rich guy. Not without some nuances.
Right.
First time we're introduced to this guy, what are we told about him? What's his occupation?
Donkey herder.
He's a donkey herder. I wanted to stop real quick. Have we seen an image of something that is bright and colorful and draws the attention and sticks out in the middle of this desert?
Yep. I don't remember what it's called, but I remember that it is bright green and so
it is
pretty.
Bright green and has this weighty fruit that looks so luscious and good. The old arar bush.
Oh, yeah. It's so deceptive.
The arar bush is so awesome looking, and this is King Saul.
Yeah. Do they make that connection in the
head
podcast?
And shoulders above everyone else? He mentions it in passing. Head and shoulders taller than everyone else. Comes from a rich, well-to-do family. Man, he is it. He's strong and capable. Let's follow that guy. If I had to follow anybody, if I wanted anybody on my team to fight for me and to defend me, that's the guy that I want. Except, what does he do for a living?
Herds donkeys.
He's a donkey herder.
And he's not a good one, right?
He's not even good at it. We are introduced to him. He's a donkey herder who has lost a donkey. How hard is it to lose a donkey? Or two, actually.
I have no idea.
Donkeys are stubborn and stiff-necked and frustrating and noisy. Not overly... it's not one of their strong characteristics to just roam freely. It's not something that you just like... You have to do something poorly in order to lose donkeys, I would assume. Yes?
Why are you
Not
laughing?
If you look at
What's your experience?
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, boy.
So we get these people. So isn't it interesting that the description of the people of Israel from Moses all throughout the time in the wilderness is You stubborn, stiff-necked people.
Yeah.
God calls his people what? What does he call him in the Old Testament, in Torah?
I don't know.
What does he call them? When we were talking about the images of the desert, what do his people need? The first image of the desert.
Oh, he calls them sheep.
He calls them sheep. They need a shepherd. They need someone who's going to love them and be sacrificial towards them. And Moses keeps calling them a stiff-necked, stubborn people. And so this stiff-necked, stubborn people
need a donkey herder.
Get a king.
They need him.
Who is a donkey herder. So much should be seen in this gift of God.
Mm-hmm.
Because not only did they get a donkey herder, he's bad at his job. I think we've kind of covered that. I mean, you got to be bad to lose 2 donkeys. So he's wandering around and he gets like, all right, I give up. But before I go, I should probably inquire of the prophet. Yes. This is the story of Saul. And God gives them their donkey herder. Because they were being donkeys.
Yeah. I was just reading about how terrible he was going to be.
And that's what they get. What happens when you appoint a leader who is groomed for the position, who is tall, dark, handsome, capable, rich, strong? Whose victory is it?
His.
It's his.
He doesn't rely on anybody else.
He knows how to do this. Hey, watch this. I can do it. Yeah? God gives them exactly what they want. They get exactly what they ask for. A king who is going to go fight their battles for them. And God knows exactly what's coming. He knows how quickly this godly, and I mean, even when he first is appointed as king, he's a godly man. But then stuff gets inconvenient, so he's like, I can take care of this. They're going out to battle, and before they go to battle, they have to make a sacrifice and inquire for God before they go out, and Samuel gets delayed. So Saul makes the sacrifice himself. Skips over Samuel altogether. Because, well, I couldn't wait on you. We were going to die if I waited on you. Oh, okay. So you can't wait on God. It's all about him. It's on his schedule, his way, and that's it. If we're going to win, it's going to be because we do it my way. And God's like, no. The firstborn of this rich family. And then we juxtapose that with where God takes us. He sends him to the house of Jesse, of the line of Boaz, from that crazy love story a couple weeks ago. And when he wanders in, God had told him, go to the house of Jesse. And here's Jesse. He's like, who are you? Are you here to kill us? And they're like, he's like, no, just I'm here to eat. So everybody gets gathered together. All the 7 sons of Jesse. God's going to anoint a new king. Got my glass slipper. Let's see who it fits. Mm-hmm. First guy goes by. Surely this is him. God's like, nope. Second one comes by. This got to be him. Nope. All 7 sons pass by, and Samuel's thinking, God, what am I doing here? Is this it? Is this all you got? Yeah, this is everybody. Well, I guess there is one more. What do you mean there's one more? Yeah, I've got this kid out in the field. He's taking care of the sheep. He's nobody really. He's the runt. He's out there annoying his sisters because they're taking care of him because, well, he doesn't have good manners and doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know right from wrong. He's still trying to figure out how to help work the family business, which is taking care of helpless sheep. Sam was like,
familiar.
Probably ought to go get him. We're not sitting down until he shows up. And God takes this lowly little nobody. And like, this is who God's people are.
Yeah.
Like, we look so often at how strong and fast and capable and smart people are, and God just says, hey, that one who is selfless and refuses to demand his own, I can work with that. You know why God picks the least of people? Because that person who's the least is going to remember where they came from. I think I remember this whole conversation about that. Isn't that the whole conversation we had in Deuteronomy? They're on the backside of the wilderness, about to step into this place that God has promised them. And what does Moses continue? What does God continue to tell his people before they enter the promised land? He says, don't forget. Remember where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
Remember who I am. Don't forget. And he mentions some specific people. Who does he remember? Every time. Yes, you do. Every time he says, remember, don't forget, he mentions a group of people.
Oh, you're talking about Abraham, Isaac?
Not Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He says, don't forget the AOWs.
Oh, yeah.
The aliens, the orphans, and the widows. See, when you're strong and capable and have all the skills of your own and you're successful, well, I did that. Mm-hmm. But when it's impossible for you to actually attain something, when you don't have the skills or the preparation or the training to do this, and God steps in and makes it happen, then it's God's victory. And over again in the life of David, as opposed to the life of Saul, we see David going, it's God's. Even when he fails, he turns back and says, this is God's. Great book that really highlights this conversation is A Tale of Three Kings.
Mm-hmm. It's so good.
But this is God's MO. God's desire is not for us to be stuck with a donkey herder, but his desire and his call and the image from the desert where he has led his people to, and I almost said pastime, but that's not right. The industry that he has raised this family up in is shepherding. Because that's what God's people need. A shepherd. Not the pick of the litter, not the greatest thing since sliced bread. A humble, lowly, gets picked on, knows what it is to be hurt, knows what it is to be beat up, knows what it is to go without because everybody else gets something first, because that person is going to remember and see that person who is oppressed. See that person who is roaming around and has nowhere to go and has no one who's looking after them. He's going to remember the alien, the orphan, and the widow because they come from the same beginnings. And without the intervention of God, they would still be right there. And that's us. That's this book of Samuel, 1 Samuel. Yes, there are tons of stories that we are not diving into, and we're going to really dive into the story of the life of David next week, but this is the last of the judges. This is where the judges die and the kings begin, and the way that God moves. So we're going to spend some time in a conversation, back and forth, ask questions. Let's have some conversation about what's going on here and what's going on in this part of the Bible, and what it means for us. So come and join us Sundays, Wednesdays, pretty regular. So have a great rest of your week, online people.